Well, firstly, regarding chapter 5, I think Pink severely sells short the power of the human imagination. So he provides, so many proof texts about, fulfilled prophecies in the New Testament, and he includes some usual suspects like Micah 5:2, Isaiah 53, Zechariah 11:12, Psalm 22, and a whole bunch of others. The thing is, if you look at those passages in their original context in the Hebrew Bible, without superimposing the New Testament onto them, it's like not only do they not say anything about Jesus at all, in a lot of cases, these fulfilled prophecies aren't prophecies at all, let alone prophecies about a Messiah figure. And the usual suspect that I've mentioned, I've actually done videos on them in the past, and I'll link to those, deep down in the let's call it the Tartarus bar this time. Um, and I kind of was thinking for a while that kind of playing detective with the passages from the Old Testament regarding, fulfilled prophecy, what was a bit of a waste of time. But I've kind of really changed my mind on that. It's not kind of the be-all, end-all, an aha moment, but it does illustrate that the prophecy fulfillments in the New Testament is a Christian reimagination of the Hebrew Scriptures. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to reject the Christian reimagination of them, but I think it does require recognition of that. And I think that kind of also calls into question the dogmatic supposition that the Christian reimagination of the Hebrew Scriptures is the only acceptable interpretation of them. To kind of close, I'm going to include or read a little bit from chapter 1 of Gospel Fictions by Randall Helms. And I think that's a pretty useful book to have around if you're kind of interested in this topic regarding the creation of the gospel narratives and fulfillments of prophecy and so forth. But I think that these couple paragraphs kind of really state kind of the differences between the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament. So, even if they had known how, early Christians would not have felt obliged to conduct the kind of historical research that might be done by a modern to find information about Jesus. They had a divinely certified source already in their possession, the Jewish Bible, which most of them after about 50 AD read in Greek, which the early Christians, by remarkably creative interpretation, turned into a new book that had never existed before, the Old Testament, a book about Jesus. Not only the prophets, but any part of the Hebrew Scriptures was subject to being reinterpreted for references to Jesus. Luke has Peter declare that even the author of Psalm 16 spoke as a prophet, Acts 2:30, about Christ. The early Christians could have found out what we could call historical information about Jesus, but in fact they did not. It is not that their methods were slipshod. They read the Old Testament very carefully. It is that their methods were not historical. They composed imaginative fiction using a method of getting at the past that involved the creative interpretation of ancient texts read as oracular. Even in these places where historical memory exists in the Gospels, it is structured not according to history, but according to a theological pattern dictated by a specific understanding of the Old Testament or other ancient texts. And they're so good at it that Arthur Pink has bought into it hook, line, and sinker.